Everyone, my name is Ginny Acha. I lead the Research, Medical and Innovation Policy work at ABPI, and it's my great pleasure that we are partnering with AMRC on this fantastic first inaugural Patients First event. I am at the part of the session which I really like, I hope you do too, where we listen on the grapevine. I think of it as sort of sitting on a tube and kind of listening into the conversation next to you, so it's quite good. Today's conversation we're listening to is Baroness Delyth Morgan's presentation from Breast Cancer Now. And she's going to talk about the collaboration that she's been engaged with Dr. David Montgomery, who leads oncology medical issues for Pfizer UK. And I think this is going to be a great opportunity to hear about how collaboration is actually working. We've had a lot of good examples of what we could do next. Let's hear what we're doing now. So over to you both.
So Delyth, I'm fascinated by your career, Baroness, seat in the House of Lords, and your role with breast cancer now. Can you tell us a little bit about how it's all come about and how you've juggled that?
Well, it's all come about entirely by accident, so that's really important to say up front. I graduated as a science graduate back in the 80s and discovered very quickly that really what I was interested in was working closely with other people, communications, campaigning, and so on. And so I ended up working in the voluntary sector. And then, not long after that, I discovered that you could actually work for a medical research charity, and I could pursue my interest in science and research through that avenue. And then, lo and behold, I had the opportunity to be chief executive of Breakthrough Breast Cancer, was able to spend 10 years growing that organisation. And I think largely, you never really know, but largely as a result of that, I was invited to come into the House of Lords, spent a bit of time in government. But the really interesting thing that happened to me was after the election in 2010, Pamela Goldberg, who was chief executive of Breast Cancer Campaign, decided to retire. So then I had the opportunity to become chief executive of Breast Cancer Campaign and help play a role in bringing Breakthrough and Breast Cancer Campaign together to create Breast Cancer Now. And of course, because we went through a merger, I feel very strongly that at that point, we were at the point where we were really looking at ourselves and thinking about what we could do as a new organisation to really speed up our progress towards our goals. And that's really the moment that Pfizer became interested in working with us on a particular partnership, which we might talk more about. So that's kind of how I kind of got to be sitting in this chair. So from your perspective, I know obviously you've had a background in medical oncology, but you've found your way to the private sector. Obviously, you also have lots of other interests as well. I don't know whether you want to tell us about those.
I may or may not share those other interests. So I find this collaboration fascinating. I started out in breast cancer. I was a breast surgeon in the NHS before I moved 9 years ago to Pfizer. And one of the things I found really interesting, so I did most of my research in how we look after women who've had breast cancer and have been treated with curative intent. And my mission in life was to try and stop what we were doing, this very one-size-fits-all approach to breast cancer follow-up. Ideally stop most follow-up, actually, because most of it is a waste of time for patients and isn't terribly well geared up to the needs of individual women. Our approach is very geared up to the needs of societies with cancer, collections of people or populations, but it's never been terribly patient-centric. So I plugged away at that for a long time, made some small gains, achieved a little bit, and I think that agenda is moving a bit further. But it's been fascinating to come to Pfizer. So I've been in Pfizer as medical director for 5 years, within the medical team for 9, and I find the challenge of working with patients and having patients more involved in what we do within the company a really fascinating one. That's something that I find very interesting. So, as you say, when we had this opportunity to collaborate with your Catalyst program, we kind of jumped to that opportunity. So, it would be good to discuss in detail, I suppose, a bit more about that programme, how you're involving patients in the research you're doing, and what we can potentially learn from it from a broader perspective.
I think for us, we've found that involving patients, women affected by breast cancer, with not only the programme as it's running, but actually even before that, to help us think about all the kind of governance issues around setting up a partnership with the pharmaceutical industry has been really important too, because for us as a charity, it's obviously vital. Lots of people here from medical research charities will know this, but we are always challenged to achieve better results more quickly, to get to our goals more quickly. And while going through a merger put us in a position where we were really on the front foot with that concern, we were also very mindful of the fact that we can't stop women dying of breast cancer on our own. We might be the largest breast cancer charity, but we're not. We're one of many players in the UK and in the world, and so collaboration for our new brand was very much at the heart of our new brand. And where would you want to start? Obviously, women affected by breast cancer, but also the pharmaceutical industry. Who are the people that get new innovation to market, that get new innovation into the health system, the pharmaceutical industry? So, when we thought about whether or not we should be, progressing a really major multi-million-pound partnership with the pharma industry, the first people we wanted to talk to was our patient advocates, to say, well, how, does this sit with what we're trying to achieve? There are risks for us as an independent charity. We are a campaigning charity. We have on many occasions had some very strong things to say about drug pricing and so on. So what does it mean? And for us to be working so closely. But the message we got back very strongly was, if we can accelerate, achievement for women with breast cancer, if it can get us closer to a cure more quickly, then we've really got to do it. And so that was very important to us. And then being clear that we wanted patients to help us basically to help us with the decision making through the grant process. So we're very lucky that we have some great advocates who are helping us through that process to make decisions about what we can, what we should be funding.
Good. No, good.
So from your point of view, it's very much a partnership. You came to us and said you'd like to be involved in our Catalyst program. You are making available to us, to our independent scientists, key drugs in your pipeline, making real sums of money available to an independently peer-reviewed research program. So how does that, is that what you're, do you see that working well for you? Is that something you would expect to be doing at this stage?
Yeah, I think so. There's two questions to that. Partnerships externally, I think, are really important. And I'll not dwell too much on that, because the patient element of it, I think, is really important to today. But something that the chief exec of GSK said, I think, at a meeting I went to a long time ago, he said, we employ 0.025% of the world's scientists. We'd be arrogant to assume we have more than 0.25% of the world's good ideas. And that kind of struck with me. I thought that was quite insightful. You really need to reach out and speak to people. And the way your Catalyst program is so embedded in the UK research community, you get to tap into all of the ideas and work that's happening in what is a vibrant place to do clinical research. So that's important. But the patient bit is a bit that I think we've seen as increasingly important as an organisation, and we've tried to get the patient voice into our clinical trials much more, and get people who are not scientists and really embedded in the research into the clinical trials much more. I don't have any great examples really yet of where that's been a huge success, but the corollary of where we've not done it and it's been a great failure, I think we can, and I've written a blog for this, which you can read a little bit about some of those stories, but certainly we have developed medicines that have not really had a market for them, and the reason that has happened is because we haven't really taken the time to, I think, my personal view, we all differ internally on our opinions, that we've not engaged properly and had the right conversations and discussions. So I think it's absolutely imperative that we do develop medicines in partnership. I mean, I find it interesting. I've written an article on endpoints that I'm trying to get published at the moment, and it's this fight about overall survival versus progression-free survival in cancer, and what the companies want from their development program and what the regulators want from there to see in a new medicine, and what the health technology agencies want to assess that medicine for the market. And the patient voice is very much lost in all of that. And I think we could spend more time thinking about, what are the trials for? They're for getting treatments to patients. So what do patients want from the treatments? And how do we assess them at a regulatory level and a health technology level? I think that would be really critically important for me.
And how do we do them more quickly?
And speed, and absolutely.
I think that's something that we hear a lot coming back. Why does it take so long? One of the anxieties, and I think we've been going for about 15 minutes now, and we haven't mentioned the word Brexit yet. But one of the worries that we all have about clinical trials, for example, is that with hard or soft Brexit, or whatever kind of Brexit we have, that we might have all the uncertainty around funding and so on, but actually we might see the agreements that we've struck across Europe become unravelled, those ones about trying to speed up clinical trials. And that's something that we hear time and time again, that patients would like to see progress as quickly as possible. And thinking about Brexit, do you have any thoughts about that?
I think we've managed to make it more than 15 minutes without Brexit. I don't think I've heard it come up at all today. It's probably the first meeting since May that it hasn't. I'm optimistic that we'll make things work. I mean, I think certainly my perspective on research collaboration in the UK is that we've got we're a US company, and we employ lots of scientists who have been UK scientists or have been born in the UK, and we've got very strong organic relationships between our research organisation in the US and the UK, and we invest more heavily. I mean, this is a uniquely Pfizer position. I'm not going to pretend to speak for industry on Brexit, but we invest more in this country than anywhere else outside of the US in terms of research, and we're the largest non-UK domiciled inward investor. And I don't really see anything in the European framework changing that particularly. I sincerely hope. But who knows? It's interesting. It's an interesting question. You seem concerned, though.
Well, only just because we had a question on it in the House of Lords the beginning of last week, and the Minister replying didn't seem very clear about what the government's position might be on a number of things. And I suppose this is where when we talk about the kind of the day-to-day detail of involving patients in our work. I mean, what we do know is that we need to see patients engaged in clinical trials, and that's so much. Patients want to be involved in research. I can see Richard sitting in the front row over there. We know from the NCRI experience that there's a lot of anxiety about the number of patients going into clinical trials for cancer actually coming down. So anything that we can do to try and stop that from happening would be a great thing.
No, I mean, I think it's a really important time to grasp the opportunity to be competitive on the international stage. The reality is, clinical research is a globally important, process. It's not a European. We're not competing in Europe for clinical research. We're competing globally, and I'm excited about the opportunities. I do want to bring you back, because you talked briefly a little bit about sacrificing independence and conflict and of interest and all that sort of stuff, and I find that really interesting, and I'd like to explore your views more than that. You've talked a little bit about the challenge of working with an organisation like us, and maintaining your independence when you're also doing public affairs type activity. How do you get the balance?
Well, first and foremost, you have to ensure that you're really clear about what you're doing and what the purpose is, and that we have our that our stakeholders, particularly our patients, are very clear about what we're doing and why. I think for us, transparency is absolutely everything. So there are, you look on our website, you can find, everything we do is laid bare there. All the relationships that we have, the relationships that we have with different pharmaceutical companies, being very, very clear. But also, in the past, and I think this might be something that would be an interesting debate to have with other medical research charities, there has been a tendency perhaps for industry to want to work with medical research charities on the kind of policy campaigning side of what some of us might do, and not so closely on the research side, which is really interesting, because of course that's the lion's share of what we do. And so what we're doing is we are focusing our relationships on research, and that is, that's great, because we then, we work with the academic community, we have our independent peer review processes, which are, we hope gold standard, and that's all about, and that's very transparent, and that's all about making sure that we're funding, high quality, innovative research that is very much in step with the aspirations of the patients that we work with and aim to represent. And so that really is making sure that you really do what you say you're going to do. That's about really good reputation management, making sure that stakeholders understand what we're all about and what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Does that answer that question?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it remains a challenge for us whenever we're thinking about these kind of partnerships. The external perception is really important, and I think there is still. You do still get sometimes occasional pockets of suspicion, and I think what you're saying about transparency is right. We had from Mike Thompson this morning giving the sort of overview of what we've been trying to do as an industry to, as you say, lay bare everything we do in the UK, and I think we've gone far with that. I think we could continue to push that agenda, and because I think the transparency is really key. People want to be able to enter into relationships and partnerships and trust that people are in it for the right reasons and doing it for the right thing.
I mean, I would say something controversial, perhaps, but
Go on, then.
One of the things that I think would help medical research charity community is that, this is clearly, government really do want us to be doing this. They want us to be working together in partnership. You look at the life sciences strategy that we're going to see. You look at, all the stuff around the accelerated access review and so on. This is what, working together is what we're, what everyone wants us to do. And so it would be good to have it talked up and celebrated more, perhaps.
Yeah, the charity sector is a really important conduit into patients. We struggle a little bit with that direct communication with patients, and I think for us that's been an interesting challenge. While we've been quite good at getting better at involving patients, we've not always been great at communicating results back out to patients. We've not always been great at having the conversation directly with patients and engaging patients as an organisation into our research, and I'd love to get to a stage where we could do more of that direct communication ourselves, but in the meantime, it looks like I'm being sent off. I've been booked twice, clearly for high tackles or something. I'm not sure. Did you have any closing final thoughts before we vacate?
Just to thank AMRC and ABPI for this. I think it's we've managed to get a really important partnership together for Breast Cancer Now and Pfizer. Obviously, we'll be publishing everything that comes out of that, for good or bad. It'll all be there for everyone to see, and it's great to be able to share our experiences and hope that others will be able to do more in between the industries and charity sector. I think it'd be great.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.